Hi guys, here I'm again. Hope you enjoyed our last session about the trademarks and the choosing of the trade name, company name, domain name, trademark, whatever it is. And you see the necessity to get into and put it 1 day, 2 days more. That gives you the possibility to spend less headache in the future on this issue. You don't want to spend all the time on IP. No, you want to put the necessary work into so that you do not need to take care of future problems. You want to avoid future problems. So the IP is there to help the business, not to occupy yourself all the time on IP. Just so to have a basic foundation on IP, right? So that was about the trademark, so to say, or the design. Now let's talk about the goods and services. So there are two components. One is the trademark and the other is the goods and services. One is not independent from one another. They have to be looked at the same time when the government agency is seeing whether there are too much proximity between the goods. So the later trademark has to get out, has not to be registered. So that is the reason why they look at both sets of issues. Now, about the classification. The classification, you have the so-called NIS classification. That is an aged instrument in the meantime, which has been adopted by WIPO, that is in the Geneva Suborganization of United Nations, and it is used in order to classify the goods and services adopted by more than 100 countries. So all over the world, they will talk you about the NIS classification. So they have 34 classification for goods and 11 classes for services. In order to give you some feeling about it, what is inside, let me cite you some headings, class headings for different classes, so you know more or less what I'm talking about. So class 4, for example, industrial and oil greases. That would be class 4. Class 7 would be about machine and machinery tools, right? Class 12 is vehicles, apparatus for transportation, locomotion for air and land and water. So all about transportation, right? And then you have class 25, for example, that would be clothing, headgear, footwear. Or you have for services 36, that would be the banking services and the monetary services and the monetizing financial services. So these are some examples. There are 45. You may look up whenever you're interested into the internet NIS classification, and you will get all 45 of them. Now you get it. It is the structure is to have on the market trademarks for certain goods and services. So you have an identical trademark Apple for computers, right? And you have another, it is not a good example. Let me say, Apple for lamps, just lamps. Apple for lamps, and you have another Apple for furniture. Furniture is not the good for, I don't know, what can it be for cars. Well, Apple is not a good example because Apple is there's too much reputation, and then with regard to reputation, this spills over to all classes, so that is a bit complicated. You do not care about this. But for gardening, you have a called lamp for gardening, and you have a lamp for kitchenware. That's possible. That is possible. because they are in completely different goods or services, right? So that is the issue. Now, let's go to see what do you aim for. You want, naturally, well, I want to be covered. I don't want to have any headache afterwards, so let me cover everything, and that's it. Now, the first issue is the cost issue. You know already that with 850 euros in Europe, and probably much less for your home country, you have at least one class. You may have 3 classes depending on the situation of the different jurisdictions. So one class in Europe is covered within this, and within the class as many goods or services, whatever class it is, as you want. So the next class, the second class, would be 50 euros extra, which is not very much. And the third class, until number 45, would be 150 euros. So now it becomes a bit substantial. If you want to cover 45 classes, you're up to, what is it, some 5,000, if I'm correct, 5,000 euros or so. So that is quite substantial, and we are cost conscious, so we don't want probably that. And the good news is, if you do that, you're not safe as you think you are. Because there is one thing, and I introduce a new concept to you, which is the use of the trademark and the requirement of use of the trademark. So you do not have a registration in abstract, and then every 10 years you make a renewal of that registration, and you don't have to care about anything else because you have everything covered. No, that is not the case. The purpose of the registration is to have those trademarks registered which are on the market, and not to block everybody. That would be a defensive trademark. We call it a defensive trademark. I may go into that in another video. So not to block everybody from trademark registration for trademarks which are not used, and which are not used for certain goods and services they are registered for. So to keep the register, so to say, clean for goods and services which are used on the market. That is the rationale behind the registry. And if you take this into account, you may now see that after certain years, it's about 5 years, you don't use your trademark, you get cancelled, or you may get cancelled. In any case, you cannot invoke a trademark which has not been used for 5 years against another trademark. So you're not out of the woods right there. So more things. If you have a wide coverage, you need to think of a monitoring. You need to monitor what others are doing with regard to the goods and services. 45, so every good and service which are in the world. So you don't want this, right? Let's discard this. 45, too expensive, you need to use, and you need to get the headache of monitoring, and you don't want this, no. Now, let's take the other extreme. You want narrow. So one class is okay for you because you have one specific good. So you take one class, and that's it. Well, what happens with this? It is cheap, right? It is just 850 euros for Europe, or even less for your home country. And you have less monitoring, but you know exactly what is going on the market, because you are on the market and you see what the competitors are doing. So that would be okay from the monitoring part. But now you think, let me see, you have wallets. You have some leather wallets or whatever it is. And you have coverage for leather wallets, which is very narrow, and you use it. So you have no problem with your use. You are handling it according to the trademark philosophies, right? Okay, what happens now? you want to expand to other products. You get some traction, you got success with your wallet in selling it because it is very fancy, whatever. Maybe you have a design, and you get traction, and you want to take on other goods with regard to that. You want, a jacket, leather jacket. So that is a different class. We know that is class 25, right? Clothing. So you need to do another application, and you do it probably after some years when you have done the first application for the wallets. So you are faced with all what has been registered in the meantime. So you cannot rely on what has been done in the beginning. No, you need to look at what has been done in the meantime, and you need to once again do all the work in the beginning, which is the hard work, right? So that is the backdrop with regard to that strategy. And then you have the intermediate issue where you say, well, I take wallets, but I may go to clothing as well at a certain moment. So I take both. I take the class for the wallets, I don't know which class it is, and the clothing, the 25. And then I have two classes. I pay 50 euros more from the beginning, but then I am safe for the next 5 years in order to expand in other industries. Now, if I don't go for the leather goods within the 5 years, well, I can forget about it, or I can refile it about it on the, if you've got the same trademark, you made in other troubles, perhaps a different trademark. But this is probably the most convenient strategy in order to make the trademark application. Now, let's go to another issue, also within the goods and services, which is the headings and the individual goods. You have for each class, you have headings which say, well, this is all in this class, and then you have the individual goods within that class. Would you go for the headings, or would you go for the individual goods or services? Well, that depends on the competition. If you want to avoid already existing conflicts with other similar trademarks, but you want to keep your initial trademark, and you want to make sure that there are no problems on the services or on the goods, then you would go for individual ones. Otherwise, you could stick with the headings, and you have a large coverage. You have a coverage of all the goods or services which fall in that particular class. Does that make sense? Is that more or less clear? So I will wrap you up. The first thing is to have the trademark with regard to the goods and services you want to manage within the next, so to say, 5 years, right? You identify the class or the classes in which you want to act, and then you look at possible competitors who already have this or that trademark which has common features. And then you decide, well, I will change a bit my trademark, or I will change a bit my goods and services in order to be more separate to that other competitor, and not face an opposition which requires me, well, to make a lawyer and appoint a lawyer, and then they talk about legal things, etc. So I don't want this. So I rather stick to have something a bit dissimilar, so that I will not enter into problems. So I get a trademark which is cheap, I get a trademark which is safe, and then I would be able to do what? To concentrate on my core business. That's what you want to do, right? Okay, so we are done. Until next time.